Hello. Hi. How are y'all doing? I am excited to be here with you guys. I'm excited about this series um, called Context Clues. I'm excited because it kind of is dealing with stuff that is confusing or difficult, or there's some things in the Bible that I just wish either wouldn't have been said, like I just wish the Holy Spirit wouldn't have said it, or if he had to say it, maybe say it differently, because some things are confusing. And so it gets into a lot of that stuff. And the question tonight that we're going to be dealing with a couple of verses that really seem like they are at odds with each other. It just seems like they're saying just straight up different things about something that's really important. So we'll get into that. But I've been up here a number of times, and some of you, a lot of you know me from Blacksburg, so these won't be new people to you. But I wanted to, for those of you that haven't been subjected to pictures of my family, I wanted to subject you to that. That one right over there, obviously, is that's my wife, Trace. We, on July the 2nd of this past year, that was our first date 30 years ago. That is, I know, it's shocking that we've been together that long. And then this is our family and some accoutrement that we've picked up to the family along the way. In the back is Nate. That's our youngest. Emma beside him. There, he's her boyfriend. And I think within a couple of months, it's going to be a fiance there. And then our middle son, Seth, is there in the middle. And his girlfriend, Rose, didn't come down for this event. She's in grad school at Boston University. And she's looking at the way that certain cancer markers respond in blood cells, and all of her cells died. And so she very selfishly chose to stay and try to save her master's degree. So which I think, okay, that's fair. And then we have, beside Seth, is Sarah. That's our daughter-in-law, and Noah, our son. And we now have a granddaughter, and we just wanted to kind of put her out there. That is Quinn. She's the best granddaughter ever. So there's just in case there's any question for those of you that are granddaughters, that may be difficult to hear, and I apologize for that. I just have to be honest with you. Okay, so that's how that is. So yeah, that's my crew. But this kind of dealing with these issues that are kind of confusing was a part of how I became one of you in the first place. The way that I became a follower of Jesus was I had heard all these things. There's certain things. I don't know if you guys have heard. The Bible is filled with contradictions. It's kind of it's an urban legend, but I believed it. I didn't have any reason not to. And so I was one of those people when I was at Virginia Tech, and this is before the internets. So we had to actually read books, and it was terrible. But trying to figure out questions like this were really important to me, because if the Bible wasn't believable, if it wasn't consistent, if we're supposed to do what it says, but we can't even agree on what it says, that feels like a little bit of a waste of time. And so that was my take. And so I would try to kind of sort these out. And these have always been really interesting questions to me. So anyway, I'm very excited about this. And we're going to deal with a couple of verses, one from Ephesians and one from James. Okay? And we're going to look at them and see if you can tell why people say these are some of the ones that are really famous for, okay, this is a contradiction. These are saying different things. See if you can tell, because they do say different things. So here's the first one. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. This is like one of those famous evangelism like verses, right? If you're trying to share with people, this is one that you make sure you know. And if, it's just it's just a kind of a famous verse. And it seems pretty clear. It says, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not of yourselves, and it's not by works. So that seems pretty clear, right? No issues, right? Okay, well, let's look at what James says, because James stirs the pot, as James often did. This is James 2. He says, in the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by action, and that word action also means work, is dead. It's like, so if you have faith that doesn't include work, your faith is dead faith. And Paul in Ephesians said that they've got nothing to do with each other. Or that seems like what he's saying, right? Do you guys see the reason that people kind of key in on this and say that's just saying different things? Does that make sense? Yeah? Well, and they're kind of right. they really do seem to be doing different things. And what we could do if we wanted is I could just say, okay, here's what I think about it. And you don't have to believe me. It doesn't have to even be convincing. I can just say it. But I thought that's just no fun. Let's not just skip to the answer. Let's show our work a little bit. And let's kind of look at how do you, when you run into verses like this, because if you're going to be someone that is like, as followers of Jesus, we don't worship the Bible. It's not Father, Son, and Holy Scriptures, right? It's not, we don't do that. Well, what we do is we are aware that the Bible, through the work of the Spirit, it is a unique book from anything else. And we are able to, it is a very key way that we're able to understand how God thinks, how he moves, how he wants us to respond to things, the life of Jesus, all that stuff. It's right. So if we're going to be people that are committed to the text, we're going to run into problems. It just is. Now, a lot of the scripture is pretty clear. I mean, you just kind of read it, and it's relatively close to just what you think it means. But there's a chunk of it that isn't. And so that might be good to show, well, how do we navigate this if we run into those places that are a little bit more confusing? All right. So I have a couple of steps that we do. All right. The first one is if you're trying to look at confusing scripture, what I like to do is look at how other translations see how they handle the word or the phrase that's weird. All right. Are you guys, have any of you studied who studied French, Spanish in high school? Yeah, most everybody. Did anybody study any Asian language or Middle Eastern? Okay, boom, there you go. You understand this then. Then when you're trying to translate ancient Greek, they call it Koine Greek, into English, it's not like translating French to English or Spanish to English, right? Because French and Spanish, at least the modern forms that we have now, they have the same kind of basic structure to the sentences. They might invert where they put an adjective compared to where we do, but it's really easy to see the differences. And so we're really just primarily learning words. In Greek, it's just altogether different, right? There's no subject, verb, predicate process for them. A word can be anywhere, literally anywhere in a sentence. They can stack all the adjectives at the end of the sentence. And they don't have periods, so you're not always exactly sure where the sentence ends. And the way that you do it in Greek, the way they did it in Greek, is that every word would have a root, right? It would have like the shortest form for the whatever word you're trying to say. And then what they would do is they would add prefixes to the front or suffixes to the back, and those prefixes and suffixes would be the things that would tell you how the word functions in the sentence. It doesn't have to be in a certain place. It can be, and so every word can have 40 different potential spellings. You just have to learn this. It was a nightmare. It was just terrible. If you're really good at math, then you will probably love Greek, because all it is learning formulas and applying it. If you're like me and wouldn't have gotten into college if it wasn't for non-math things, then Greek is a nightmare. But so when you're trying to translate it, different translations will do it differently, right? They all go to the same pools. It's not like they have their own kind of clusters of original stuff. No, they all go to the same pools, but they have different jobs. Different translations have different jobs, right? So some, like the New American Standard, is like, it's written to be really technical. It doesn't. If you read the New American Standard Bible, it's not very readable. It's just line, 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 line. And they do that because in Greek, again, there weren't, paragraphs. There weren't anything like that. It's just kind of, it's not, they didn't write the way we read. They wrote the way that they wrote. And so it does it like that. On the other end of it, with the Message or the New Living, they're trying to get at, when people heard, and most people, when they would have originally gotten the stuff in the scriptures, they would have heard it, they wouldn't have read it. It isn't just the words, it's what the words make you feel, right? Like if someone today said that someone was canceled, and then 2,000 years later, somebody reads that sentence and they don't understand what that means, they'll get a chunk of it because we're not, it's not a random use of cancel, but they certainly won't get the whole idea, right? So for those ones that are trying to translate the thought, they're trying to make it so that you get the feeling that people would have gotten then. So that means that they're going to translate some things differently. Not wrong, they're just going to do it differently. And if you want to know how your Bible does it, right at the very start of it, in the first couple of pages, they will have, they'll list, this is what we're trying to do in this translation. So you can see that. If I run into a difficult scripture, one of the first things I do is look at other translations and see what they say. And if you don't, crosswalk.com does it really well. There's a ton of websites that do it. You can use whatever one you want. And if you're doing that, the goal is not to just find one that says what you like. You're not trying to find one that kind of like, oh yeah, I like, okay, that lets me do this, or that, says that they can't do this. And so, okay, we'll take that. You're looking for what's a common theme? What kind of starts to bubble up to the top? So that's one thing that I do if I feel like in verses like this, one of them is saying, faith is not connected to works. And then James comes along and says, faith is absolutely connected to works. What do we do? So I look at that first. All right. Now, that doesn't help us at all because it's the same words. They're using exactly the same words. So that's not very helpful. If that doesn't work, sometimes I like to go to the lightning round and I'll go ahead and look up the actual Greek and Hebrew term, which if you have taken these languages, you can do that. If you haven't, there's a website called Blue Letter Bible that does all that work for you. You just type in the verse, you type in the translation you want, it brings it up, and then you click on the little icon that says tools, and it takes you to the actual Greek text that everything is translated from. So it shows you the actual text, and it shows you the words. It tells you how to pronounce them if you want to wow your friends and parents. And so sometimes that'll help because then you'll see, okay, they're using different words, but we're just translating the same. Like for us, we do that sometimes in English with, in Greek, there are 4 different words for love that we just call love. And so that could cause some confusion because they're actually talking about a specific type and we're not. Does that make sense? Yeah? So we could do that. That really doesn't help us here either because in Greek, the word for faith is pistis, and both James and Paul use it. And I always forget the one, ergon. And the word for work in Greek is ergon, and they all use it too. So these are great things to do, but they don't really help us out at all. But it's nice to know that you can at least do these because sometimes they do help. All right. So if that doesn't work, then what do you do? Context. The whole thing that we've been talking about, that you guys have been talking about during this series. This is if we look at what is trying to be said in a little bit of take a broader swath at it, then sometimes we can help. I don't know if you've ever been in a conversation where you're describing something, how you feel about something or your perspective on something, and then the person you're talking with, they think they know what you're going to say, and then they just jump in as if they understand. But you can tell from what they're saying that they in no way actually understand you. That's a wonderful feeling, isn't it? Don't we all enjoy it? Isn't that what make, family holidays so much fun, and none of us like that feeling of being misunderstood. And the reality is, if we don't kind of take a broader look at some of this, if we just pull a sentence out and try to figure out what's going on, a lot of the times we're actually doing that to the Spirit. We're cutting him off. We're not letting him make his point, and we're assuming we know. And most of the time, we're going to be incorrect. So let's let him, in both of these, make his point. And let's see if that helps, okay? So let's go to Ephesians, this first, and let's look at some of the context here. And Paul's letters are nice because he kind of has a process that he uses. And he doesn't use it all the time exactly in the same way, but he generally stays pretty close to it. And his processes and his letters, the first half of any letter that he has, however long it is he'll write a letter because he'll hear that there's a problem. He'll know that there's a problem in a church. Someone will bring him something. A lot of them are written when he was in prison. So someone will come and say, what do we do with this? This is happening and it's weird. And so the first half of the letter, what he'll do is he'll kind of share broad theology, and he'll talk about God, and he'll talk about us, and he'll talk about why we're in the situation we're in, and what has happened across time and all this. So he's speaking very broadly, and he's being accurate, but he's speaking broadly. And so then what he is doing is he's setting the base for the second half of the letter, where he starts getting specific to the things that they're dealing with, right? So he kind of says, well, if you understand this about God and you and the world, this will help. And then he gets into the answers. So if you're looking at, if there's something that's confusing and it's in one of Paul's letters, and if it's in the first half, then you can make a pretty good bet that he's kind of speaking broadly. If it's in the second half, you can see he's being a little bit more specific. And this is in Ephesians 2. Let's a little Sunday school quiz. Does anybody know how many chapters are in Ephesians? What's that?
6.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so 6 in sign language is right. So 6. And so if we do some quick math, if we're in chapter 2, which half are we in, right? So we're towards the beginning. So here's what he says. He says, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins. And he's talking to them, but he's also talking to all of us. This is true of all of us, okay? As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. So he's just saying, this is how people are. All right? We're all like it. We've all been there. This is our universal human situation. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. Some of the people that do these translations of these Bibles it's remarkable what they've done. Some people, there's one guy, James Gorman, who's a theologian I really like, and he's done most of his professional career focusing on Paul's use of prepositions. That seems like the most boring thing ever. I feel like we could say, okay, that's Paul, he wrote it, there's some prepositions, I see them, let's move on to something else. But he has spent, decades working on this. He came to a doctoral cohort that I was in, and he gave us a 5-hour lecture on Paul's use of prepositions. I wanted to stab out my eyes. But it comes in really handy here, because what he's saying, he brought up this verse. He says, because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions. He says that when we get connected to Jesus, when we say, will you just please forgive me? And we begin to follow him, the way I would always describe it, he would say is wrong. I would always describe it as we kind of get fused to him, that we get connected to him. He would say that's not right. We actually get absorbed into him. We are absorbed into the body of Jesus. We're, pulled into the thing. And that's what makes us alive. If you're dead, if something's really dead, not like dead for 5 hours and I saw a bright light and I came back and wrote a book about it. I'm not talking about stuff like that. I'm talking about if you're genuinely actually dead. The only way you come back is if something that's alive, that has the capability, makes you alive again, right? It's the only way it happens. And so our bodies, our souls were dead. And when we reach out to Jesus, he absorbs us into himself. And because his body's so alive, he brings us back to life. He resurrects us. And so he says, you were dead in your transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And then he says, and God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Jesus Christ, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Jesus Christ. For it is by grace you have been saved. This is not of yourselves. It's a gift of God. It's not by works, so that no one can boast. Now, pay attention to this. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So see, Paul is making this really big, broad statement. He's writing to the people in Ephesus. Ephesus was the center of Artemis or Diana worship in its day. If you're familiar with Greek and Roman mythology, those names will ring a bell. And this wasn't like some sort of little side hustle that they had, just kind of, this was the center of a lot of what Ephesus did. The temple of Artemis in Ephesus was one of the ancient wonders of the world. It was massive. In fact, in Acts, when Paul goes to Ephesus to start the church there, so many people come to Christ that they stop buying the figurines and the false idols that were made there. That was a big industry. And so the people that made them started a riot and tried to kill Paul. So it was like, this is a, things are going on here. And all of these people had grown up in this city that had taught this belief that you had to do certain things to get on Artemis's radar. And so he's writing to these people and he's saying, that's not how it works. You can't be good enough that God goes, them. I want them. That's not, that God fundamentally works differently. He's always worked differently. With in the Old Testament, in Judaism, they couldn't earn it. He just chose them. And then, after Jesus, if we just say, would you please take me? He does that. So he is clearly making a point that you can't earn this. But even that, right after that verse that seems to really be at odds with what James says, Paul says, not by works so that no one can boast, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. See, Paul is not saying these two things have zero to do with each other. They're saying that good works don't do enough to get you in, right? Another theologian that a lot of us really like is Dallas Willard, and one of his famous things that he would say is that faith is not opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning. When you're talking about faith with Jesus, it's not opposed to effort. It's not like there's no effort that's involved. I don't think Jesus had any thought that we would just sit down because now we love Jesus and we're forgiven and we just wait till heaven, till the fun stuff starts. It's like, no, you've been made alive again. You've been given a new life. I want you to see how to live it, right? So faith is not opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning. So this gives us some help because one, we see in the sentence right after the one that seems to be saying so strongly that's got nothing to do with anything, any work that we do, Paul seems to say, no, he's created us for stuff to do, right? Does that make sense? You with me here? All right. So now let's look at James. So James comes in, and James is one of these guys. I think that, he's one of those people like, and we have them today, that you either really love him or you despise him. He's one of those people that you think is just great because he says it like it is, or you don't ever want to be around him because he's constantly saying it just like it is. All right? So James comes in and just stomps right into this. And he says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In chapter 1 and earlier in chapter 2, he is raging on people that don't care for the poor. We politicize this stuff to where you almost can't talk about any of this without people thinking you're making a political statement. I am not making a political statement, making a Jesus statement. It seems like God cares desperately for the people that are poor. He cares for refugees and immigrants, and it would be we ought not too quickly just move over them because of a political statement. So he's saying, okay, so tell me how does this help people? If someone's hungry and cold and you say, go, be warm and well fed. I've done my part. He's like, that doesn't help at all, does it? That does nothing. In the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. So he's like, for people that say, no, I believe in Jesus. I don't do anything. I believe. He's like, fantastic. That's great. You now understand that's how it is. Who cares if that's all that it is? Even the demons believe that and shudder. You foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is dead? And then he goes on and continues to make the point. We won't go into that just for time. So what James seems to be doing is he's talking about not like Paul is talking about faith. Faith is such a big term. It means all kinds of things at once, doesn't it? Faith means, like some people and some churches, they say, I came to faith. That means I got saved, I became a follower of Jesus, whatever it is. So it can mean like the overall, I follow Jesus. Faith means that I trust him and obey him, even if my eyes are telling me there's a better way to do it or the people around me are doing it differently. It means that. Faith, being faithful can mean you're consistent. There's all kinds of, it's a very, very big word in our gig. Followers of Jesus, faith is about as big a word as we have. It means a ton. And so these two guys are talking about it differently. Paul is saying to a group of people that have been raised with the understanding that you have to earn your way into the vision of the God that you follow. He's saying that's absolutely wrong. You're incapable of it. You're dead. You've got no worth other than the fact that God loves you. And because he's so rich in mercy, because he loves you, he invites you to be absorbed into himself and bring you back to life. And then he gives you a new life because he loves you. And James is saying he's writing primarily to the Jews, that was his primary audience, that believed that as long as you were in because you were a Jew, that's all you had to do. He's saying that's not enough. He's saying that if you go through life or you go through a period of time and your relationship with Jesus has no effect at all on what you do, you don't think about him, you don't ask him his thoughts, you don't adjust anything, you do just what everyone else around you is doing. James would say, you need to ask yourself the question, has your faith died? And, in Galatians, it says that can happen too. It says that, there's fruits of the flesh and fruits of the spirit. And so, lust, anger, jealousy, all of that are, some of the fruits of the flesh, and love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control are the gifts of the spirit. And he says, whichever one you kind of feed more will grow more. James is saying that it's possible that your faith can die. Now, for us, when we read that, we think, well, crap, how long does it take for my faith to die, right? We're Western readers. We read technically. We want to know the edges of things. Really, we would be happier if the Bible were written like a Wikipedia page, honestly, because it's clear, right? When something's really important, we want it to be clear. You don't like it to be super confusing. It's like, well, my dog is very sick and he needs this medicine, and people aren't okay with saying, well, how much do I give? I don't know, just enough. Don't give them too much though. We don't want to do that. We want to be specific. We want it to be, concise, efficient, predictable. So when we read this and we think, oh my gosh, James is saying my faith could die. How long do I have? Do I have 2 months or 2 years or 6 years or a bad weekend? How long? And James is not the least bit interested in answering that. The Holy Spirit isn't interested in answering that. Because he is talking, and Paul does the same thing, even though he's a little bit more precise in some of his terms. We're looking for a technical definition, but this stuff is written relationally. It's not He doesn't want to say in exactly 14 days, if you don't use sufficient this and this and this is going to happen. He's saying, let's realize that that's the case. Let's realize that we are being called to something, and let's just go live for that. If you want to know, that it doesn't apply, then just apply your faith. So these verses that are saying these really different things, Paul saying that it is by grace you are saved through faith. It's a gift of God, not of works, so that no one can boast. And James saying faith without works are dead. These are not contradictions. They're talking about different components. And they're talking about it within the context of relationship. And so what they're trying to do is help flesh it out. No letter or book in the Bible is exhaustive in how it approaches a particular topic. It's not designed to be that way. It's as you continue to read it, you continue to flesh out more and more. As you start to live it, then the Holy Spirit kind of helps you understand more and more. When I first started walking with God, I was trying to just understand it. Like if I could read it all and understand it all, then I could do what I needed to do. And that's wrong. Yeah, there we go. And it's as we try to live this stuff, as I realize, okay, my gosh, it seems like God cares for the poor, and I don't know that I do. Spirit, can you help me understand how I might do that a little bit better? These things start to come a little bit more alive, and then you kind of focus on other things, and you come back, and it gets a little bit more. And it's just as we walk together, we understand each other better. I've been with my wife now for 30 years. I am more fluent in Tracy than anyone else on the planet. And yet I'm still learning about her. She still does things that surprise me. But the breadth and the context of what we bring into the conversations with each other is so much bigger than it was those first couple of years. Here's the point, and I'll close it up. A lot of times when we run into these issues in the scripture, the reason that it seems problematic is because we're reading it technically. And I don't mean technically in that we can't read it, that it doesn't have heft and it doesn't hold together, it does. But what I mean is we're looking for the edges that are more specific than the Spirit is trying to be. He's trying to say, this is how I want you to live. Come follow me, and then I'll help you understand what that means for you. That's what he's saying for us. That's what he's doing here. These things are not contradictions. They're just different pieces of the thing. Yeah? Okay. We don't have time for the other two things, but that's it. Well, kind of, we did one of them. So let me pray, and then we'll see if there are any questions. God, we, at least me, maybe the folks in here don't do this, but I can still just try to stay in my own head a little bit too much. I can just try to understand more, and it certainly helps to understand. That's a good thing, Lord. I'm glad that there are people that spend their entire professional career dealing with Paul's prepositions, because I sure don't want to do that. But Lord, help us just to be people that, because we're approaching you relationally, and we know that you are approaching us relationally, that we can just trust that as we continue to walk with you, these things that are confusing, these things that don't quite fit together, that there's a way that they can, that we don't pull back and just say, well, we can't understand it, or we don't say, well, because it can mean a bunch of things, it can mean whatever I want it to. Lord, help us to see what you're trying to do and to do that. Lord, please. God, we love you. Amen. Oh, so if the way that you approach general relationships is, I have to do enough so that people will love me, how do you not think that way about God?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is really easy, and you should probably.
It's a very quick answer. Just don't do that thing. Do the other thing. That's done. Now, I think that's a good question, and I'm kind of the poster child for this. I was the middle child growing up. I was the kind of screw up kid growing up. My dad didn't like me and never really did too much. And I felt like I had to constantly demonstrate my worth early on. And I think the thing that he showed me, I don't know if this is a complete answer, but this is the start of an answer, is I feel like at some point God kind of showed me that I had inverted the way that I look at things, that I was looking at him through the lens of how we look at each other. And he's calling us to look at each other through the lens of how he looks at us. And so I started looking at how he actually looks at us. And I started looking at how Jesus was. And Jesus did get angry, but it was so rare, it's like weird when Jesus gets mad. Like, he curses a fig tree and we're like, what? And yet, if it were any of us, we would curse every fig tree. I mean, it wouldn't even come up because it happens so much. I realized that what I had missed and what was constantly keeping me on this treadmill with people is that I was aware that God loved me. I mean, he's kind of contractually obligated, and he says that he does. But I didn't at all believe that he liked me. I thought he was always kind of disappointed in me. And through a bunch of situations and through a lot of prayer and just walking with him and talking with people, I started to realize that. And so that started to bubble up. And if you struggle with feeling like I can't trust God because I can't trust people, or I need to earn it from God because I need to earn it from people, if you just say, God, I get the sense this may not be right, help me see how it isn't, and you just keep praying that, just keep going, absolutely the Spirit will start to show you how God actually feels. He'll start to show you when you're trying to earn it. And he just kind of has a way of doing that. He just kind of brings it up. He doesn't slam us with everything we're doing wrong at once. If he did, I think we would all just die. But if you just keep asking that thing that, that Elena says, that I'm so wise. I do think she does think that, which is very, very kind. No one growing up would have ever thought that of me. To this day, my family doesn't think that. I'm still like 16-year-old Jim in their minds. But what I did, I felt like I wanted to have wisdom, so I prayed. I didn't pray every day. I'm sure I didn't. I'm just not that consistent. But I prayed most of the time for several years. God, would you and then help me be wiser? And then that's become something that people notice. And that's weird to say. I'm not saying it to. I'm just saying, how great is God that he takes an idiot and he turns him into someone that people can say, I appreciate the perspective of that person. How great is God that takes someone that feels like I have to earn from everyone, including God. And he works with you and he helps you understand that you are actually so much more loved and liked and enjoyed than you could imagine. And once that gets more and more rooted, the thing that let me deal with my dad better was I was so much more rooted in God's like of me that my father's disappointment in me didn't matter. And as much. It always matters a little bit. So yeah, that would be a start. Just ask a ton and just keep asking and keep asking and keep bugging him about it. And I guarantee you he'll show you. That's my semi-quick answer. Yeah, that's right. Other questions? Yeah, that's a good question. So how do you navigate things if you're wanting to do a good thing, but you're not sure that your motives are good, or in some cases you're pretty sure they may not be? Yeah. What's never happened to me because my motives have always been super pure, But I've read blogs about people that are not as pure as I am. Yeah, blogs. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I read on that interweb. Got on my Yahoo search engine. My wife still has a Yahoo email, and I don't ever give it out to anybody because it just embarrasses me too much. I think that Paul even said, I don't know why I do the things I do. He said, I just entrust myself to him who judges justly. And I read that and I remember thinking, I'm like that. I am really limited in my capability to even understand fully what my motives are. And I've tried to become a fairly reflective person. I don't know how reflective I actually am, but I've really tried to be for a long time. But I just don't understand myself. And so the best thing that I've been able to do is in living in community, if I'm not sure, or if this is an area where in the past I've had bad motives or something like that, I just tell people, like, here's something that I'm doing. Um, I don't exactly know if I'm doing it for exactly the right reasons. And I just, maybe you guys keep an eye, maybe pray for me, and let's just see. I talk to God about it a lot. When I was dealing with some of those things, God actually had me do several things over the course of 2 years. And he said, and I don't want you to tell a single person about it. Tell no one. And it was really interesting to kind of do the things without any. And, a lot of times I would mention it, like I preach back then, I was preaching all the time. And so things would come out, and I wasn't doing it to say, look what I'm doing. I'm just saying, here's an example of what I try to do. But he said, this is just between you and me. I don't want this to find its way out. And as I did that, he helped me understand more things. So over the years, I've learned I don't back away from doing them because I never really know if my motives are good enough. I just would never know. Even if they are, I wouldn't know it. And so I just keep doing it and keep being public about my concern and keep praying. And then I just trust that the Spirit is going to guide. As I've gotten older and as I've walked with God longer, there's a phrase that I have become more certain about fewer things. And, when I was in my 20s, I was looking at things. And as I was reading the Bible for the first time, I felt like I was super clear about everything. I just understood it all. And as I've gotten older and as I've had more experiences and if bad things have happened and great things have happened, I feel like some of that clarity has dropped off. I don't understand things as much as I thought I did. But then some things have gotten so much deeper. And one of the things that's gotten deeper is the power of God to work in me and around me. So if I have bad motives, I trust that God's going to show me over time. If other people are, sometimes we're concerned about them. Are you doing this? Like this is the weekend of Thon. And so you could feel like, are people doing this because it's a really good thing to do or because it's a social phenomena that happens? And I guarantee you it's both. And that's fine. And so as people are trying to sort that out, the Spirit will show them too. That's great. But I don't want to back away until I have it right enough, or I will never do a single thing because I'm just too screwed up to ever get close enough to right that then I'd be able to start doing stuff. That's what I would say. That make sense? Yeah. Cool. Any others? So if you are looking at something like where James says faith without works is dead, and you're like, okay, let's get after some works. How would you begin to go about doing it? Is that right?
Yeah.
Is there like how would you correct that? Okay. Paul in 1 Corinthians 13 he says, you can sell everything you have. You can, give your body over to the flames. You can literally martyr yourself for people. But if you do it without love, you really haven't done anything. So I'm always looking for how can I love people more? And I'm asking God, who are the people that I tend to look over? And is he calling me to engage with them, or what would he want me to do? I think that the tricky thing is, especially in our culture, because there's so many important causes that are going simultaneously, and people can feel like their cause is the one that's the most important, and that's a great thing for someone that's leading in one of those to feel, because that gives them the drive to keep moving in that cause. Then you can feel like you're just kind of pinballing between causes and you don't really do anything. So I would try to see, God, are you raising something in me? Is there something that matters more to me? And are you calling me into something? Is there a fear that keeps me from really listening to you? I try to look at what my fears are, and I try to look at how can I do whatever it is that I'm doing in love and not out of anger. I mean, I know people, I'm sure we all do. They do a ton of things for Jesus, and there just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of Jesus inside them anymore. They're just cranky, angry. They're doing a million things for him, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of love. I don't want to be like that. And it's easy to get like that, especially over time. So I try to protect against that. Now, is that how close? What in your question did that not deal with?
What are small practices that we can do of faith, not of rest?
Okay.
Or ways that we can start asking about this?
Yeah. Okay. So what are some ways that you can begin doing that? What are some practices? For me, it never gets very exotic. It's just pretty basic stuff. I look at what am I thinking about and what am I talking to God about? And then I look at, am I talking to him about this kind of stuff at all? Am I, what I mentioned before, am I afraid of things or not? And then I really do trust God. Can you help me look for an opening to get into this particular kind of whatever it is that I feel? And sometimes it takes 2 weeks, sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it might take a few years to figure that out. And I think the Spirit's okay with that. It's like, that's fine. If it takes 5 years to work out some of this stuff, then when you do, how great is that? And so I just keep asking, and I keep talking, and I look for ways the Spirit might answer. And if I think he might have, I jump at it. And then I see if sometimes what we want to do is we want enough clarity on what the next step is that we don't end up taking any step. I just start taking steps. And I trust that if I'm going in the wrong direction or I'm 10 degrees off or something like that, he'll correct me if it's important to. He can work out all that. But I just try to get moving. But then I also really, and in our culture, we really have to be careful of this. I really watch to see, now, if I'm doing this, do I think God loves me more? Am I turning it into a contractual thing? Okay, God, I'm doing this, so what are you going to give to me? Like, we've already gotten more than we could ever ask for from God. So I try to be aware of that. And I just try to protect against too much pull from all the different causes that I care about or that I could care about. And I try to hone in on one that I can make a difference in. Yeah? Okay, you're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions? All of that. Answer the question about prayer. Right. Yeah, there we go. And how does it work? Yeah. No. That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think a lot of our issues with prayer, like, I know I can have this, and I know in the past I definitely had it. If I started asking God for something, and I mean something that's important, not I'd like to have a nicer car. I would, but but someone is sick and I would like them to be healed. Or this person is poor, or this group of people are poor, and I would like them to be more fully provided for. Really important things. Or I would ask about relationship stuff, or what am I going to do with my life stuff. What we have in our mind is a stopwatch that goes off or that starts. And we have in our mind, maybe it's a countdown clock is maybe a little bit better. We have in our mind an appropriate amount of time for God to do something if he's actually going to do it. And if he doesn't do it in that time, we take it as a failure. Or we take it as, well, God didn't do that for me. And then if we see that he does it for other people, because, you go around and people have these amazing stories, but he doesn't do that for me, then, well, why not? Is it that he doesn't feel that way about me? Or he doesn't do, you know what I mean? We have all these ways we interpret God's care for the other people or for us based on what we're asking for and based on what he does. Yeah? I think that's difficult. I think that what I've learned over time is I have much less certainty about specifically what he's going to do in any given moment, but I'm much more committed to praying about it anyway. because it's just, he says to just, he's my Father in heaven. And that's been, I mean, I've mentioned it a few times. It's been a tricky concept for me because of my father was, it was weird. And, but my Father in heaven, he just wants to talk to me about the things that matter to me. And he wants me to talk to him about what I'm going through. And he says he wants me to ask for the things that I want, but he doesn't promise that he's going to provide it in the way that I ask for it. And I've been walking with him long enough that I can see the wisdom in his lack of response in certain cases. Some things I can't. My grandfather died of cancer, and it was a terribly painful cancer, and he's one of the greatest men I ever knew. And he shouldn't have had to die that way. He just shouldn't have. And I still carry that with God. I mean, I was at Tech when the shootings happened, and you see things like that, and it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have. God, why didn't you stop it? You could have. Why didn't you? And I think what I've learned with God is that he's okay with my frustration and anger. He's not offended by it. He's not intimidated by it. He doesn't turn away. But I've become more and more clear on the fact that he is just working so differently than the way I internalize this process. But his way is so much better than if he did it exactly the way that I thought. We tend to think if God would do it my way, it would be better. And what I've been able to see over the years is that's actually not the case. That he's ushering us. Sometimes our prayer for people in this moment, or because we're focused on this moment and we don't see the eternity in front. And we can't, because all we have, this we call a lifetime, even though it's a blip on the screen of the eternity that we're actually with God. And so I've started to notice all those things that can skew my view. And so what that's made me do is I don't know how God is going to respond to this prayer. I just want to talk to him about it because I know he cares about me. And he tells me to talk to him about the things that matter to me. So I'm just going to do it. I don't think if 10 people pray for something, it's more God listens. And if 9 prayed, he was like, wow, I was like this, but no. I don't think that's how it works. And I think when a group of people come together, united in prayer, it frees God up to do things. Now, that feels like, well, it's either one or the other. And with God, it isn't. It's not a certain number. It's not a formula. But he seems to say, come to me in prayer, personally and privately, and come to me communally. And I listen to you. I hear what you're saying. I meet you in the things that you are suffering in. He even says in Psalms that he catches our tears. That he collects them. That the idea that he's so close to us that we don't physically cry without him noting and counting and collecting our tears. That's a presence that I just don't think we really understand. So I think what I try to be careful of is figuring out the formula. And I just say there is this God in heaven that loves me so much. He came, physically died for me in a way that I didn't deserve, did it joyfully, which that's insane. And he just says, I just want to be with you, Jim. And I'm not that great. And so if that's the offer, then I'm just going to go for it. And I'm going to trust that guy to work out how these things play out. And if it plays out exactly the way I think, praise God, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't, okay, he's doing something and I can trust him. It's like I know in my guts that Tracy, while I'm here, is not selling our home and moving to Des Moines, with some other dude. I know she's not. And I know that because over 30 years, she's shown there's a way that she is. And that context of the depth of that relationship tells me that I don't have to wonder if that's actually maybe happening or not. It's not. I know her. So I know things about God because of the length of time we've walked together. And I've learned to trust those things more. Does that make sense? Does that, I bet I probably answered 5% of that question.
Sure.
It is a big question. But afterwards, if you want to follow up, then let me know. I mean, because it's an important question, and it is tough because it pulls people away from God left and right because I feel like he doesn't do in me what he does in these other people. Or he just doesn't answer prayer. What's the point anyway, really? And then we just kind of back off and just God stays in his corner, I stay in mine. And that's not the kind of life he's called us to. That's not the relationship he wants. We're his kids and he just loves being with us. He just wants to talk to us. When I talk to my kids on the phone, my daughter, she and her boyfriend, they went to look at rings. And I got a text. It was in the middle of that thing where you guys were, and I just ducked out. And it was because I got a text and she said, look at these rings. Look at you. She just wanted to tell me. And I just wanted to hear. I've got nothing to do with that decision. I don't think Nate is going to ask me, hey, Jim, what do you think? He doesn't care what I think about that. I mean, he better ask me if he can marry her. That better happen. But she just wanted to tell me, and I just wanted to be in it because she's my daughter and I love her. And I think that the longer I've been a parent, the more God's love has kind of gotten fleshed out a little bit more for me. I'm not just looking at it as a kid to a dad who was kind of weird. I'm looking at it as a father to daughters and to a daughter and sons who are amazing. That's the closest initial swing I can give you. But if you want to ask other parts of it, let me know. I'm happy to chat. Yeah. All right. Yeah, there we go. Well, thank you guys. This was fun.